There is an old story, older than any book can tell, about how the soul came to be lost, and how it might find its way home again. It is not a story written in some ancient language and waiting to be translated. It is written in you, in the very structure of your longing, in the restlessness that wakes you at 3 in the morning, in that strange ache for something you cannot name. Jacob Boehme knew this story. He was a shoemaker in 17th century Germany. He was a man with no formal education, no theological training, no credentials that would mark him as qualified to speak of the things he would come to speak of. And yet, one day, while gazing at the light reflecting off a pewter dish, something opened in him. The surface of ordinary reality cracked, and he saw through to what lay beneath. What he saw, he spent the rest of his life trying to describe. This teaching is an attempt to share what he found, not as a museum piece, not as historical curiosity, but as living instruction. Because what Boehme discovered is as urgent now as it was 400 years ago, perhaps more so. Part 1. The problem of knowing. Let us begin where all genuine spiritual inquiry must begin, with a question about how we know anything at all. Boehme understood something that most of us overlook. The mind that analyzes, categorizes, and reasons its way through the world cannot, by its very nature, touch the deepest truths. This is not because the rational mind is bad or wrong, it is simply the wrong tool for the job. Think of it this way. You can study every book ever written about swimming. You can memorize the physics of buoyancy, the biomechanics of the stroke, the chemical composition of water. But until you get in the water, until the water meets your skin and you feel yourself held by something other than solid ground, you do not know what swimming is. Spiritual truth is like this. It cannot be approached from the outside. It must be awakened from within. Boehme did not learn what he knew from books. He did not piece it together from the teachings of others. Something opened in him, a faculty of inner perception that most of us have forgotten we possess. He called it the eye of the soul. Others have called it the heart's intelligence, or contemplative vision, or simply direct knowing. Whatever we call it, the point is the same. There is a way of knowing that is not thinking. There is a seeing that is not done with the eyes. And until that faculty awakens, we can accumulate all the spiritual information in the world and remain fundamentally untouched by it. This brings us to one of Boehme's most uncomfortable insight, uncomfortable, at least, for those of us raised in religious traditions. He understood that believing in a historical Christ, accepting doctrines about events that happened 2,000 years ago, attending services and reciting prayers, none of this, in itself, transforms the soul. He called this kind of faith dead letter. It is faith about something, rather than faith that is something. Real faith, for Boehme, is not an opinion you hold about the past. It is a living force. It is the soul's hunger reaching toward its source. It is a kind of spiritual gravity that pulls you toward what you most deeply are. This distinction matters, because many of us have been taught that salvation is a matter of correct belief, that if we accept the right propositions about God and history, we will be saved. Boehme saw through this. He understood that you can believe every word of Scripture and remain completely unchanged. You can recite every creed and still be living in spiritual darkness. What transforms is not belief. What transforms is awakening. Part 2. The Divine Anatomy. Now we must go deeper into territory that may seem strange at first. Boehme was not content to speak only of personal spiritual development. He wanted to understand the architecture of existence itself. How did the many come from the one? How did light and darkness, good and evil, spirit and matter? How did all these apparent opposites arise from a source that is described as perfect unity? His answer is remarkable. In the beginning, and if we can even use such a word, there is what Boehme calls the Ungrund, the abyss, the groundless ground. Imagine, if you can, a state before existence, before light and darkness, before time and space, before any quality or distinction whatsoever. This is not a place, it is not a thing, it is a kind of pure freedom, a nothing that contains the possibility of everything. This is God before God becomes God, the infinite before it takes any form. But here is the paradox. Pure perfection cannot know itself. If you are everything, there is nothing to look at. If you have no boundaries, there is no contrast, no other, no mirror in which to see your own face. And so, according to Boehme, the Ungrund wills to know itself. It generates a kind of mirror, what he calls divine wisdom, or Sophia. In this mirror, the formless begins to perceive itself. Subject and object arise. The one begins to become many. This is not a fall. This is not a mistake. This is the necessary structure of conscious existence. For anything to be known, there must be a knower and a known. For anything to be loved, there must be a lover and a beloved. Duality, in this sense, is not the enemy of unity. It is how unity experiences itself. From this original movement, Boehme traces what he calls the 7 qualities or properties, a kind of spiritual chemistry, through which pure spirit gradually condenses into what we experience as nature. We need not get lost in the technical details. The essential insight is this: the visible world we inhabit is not separate from the divine. It is spirit that has become dense enough to touch. Think of water vapor, liquid water, and ice. They are all the same substance in different states. In a similar way, spirit and matter are not different substances. Matter is spirit that has thickened, slowed down, become tangible. This means that nature, the trees, the stones, your own body, is not a prison for the soul. It is a theatre in which the divine drama unfolds. It is the canvas on which the invisible becomes visible. But at the heart of this process, Boehme identifies a profound polarity, one that explains almost everything about our situation. He calls it fire and light. Fire is the principle of intensity, desire, strength, energy. It is the driving force of existence. It is what makes anything move, want, or act. Light is the principle of illumination, peace, love, wisdom. It is what makes anything beautiful, harmonious, or good. Neither can exist without the other. This is crucial. We often imagine that spirituality means escaping from intensity into peace, leaving desire behind for some static perfection. Boehme says no. The light needs the fire. Love needs power. Wisdom needs strength. If you had light without fire, you would have a kind of pale, anemic goodness, and pleasant but powerless. Think of people who are kind but passive, gentle but unable to stand for anything. They have light but no fire. If you had fire without light, you would have raw force with no direction, desire with no fulfillment, strength that only consumes and destroys. Think of people driven by ambition or rage, burning hot but bringing no warmth. They have fire but no light. The goal is not to extinguish the fire, the goal is to illuminate it. Part 3. The Cosmic Tragedy. Here we come to the darker part of the story, the part that explains how things went wrong. Boehme speaks of a being called Lucifer, not as a cartoon villain with horns and a pitchfork, but as a principle, a power, a cosmic event. Lucifer, in Boehme's telling, was a high spiritual being, a concentration of divine fire, tremendous in power and beauty. But something happened. Instead of allowing that fire to serve the light, instead of surrendering personal power to universal love, Lucifer turned the fire in on itself. This is what pride is, at its root. It is the fire deciding that it is sufficient unto itself. It is power refusing to serve anything greater than itself. And when this happens, the fire becomes dark. It still burns, perhaps it burns more intensely than ever, but it gives no light. It only consumes. This is what Boehme means by hell. Hell is not a place God sends bad people after they die. Hell is what happens when fire burns without light. It is the state of self-enclosed desire, forever hungry, forever unsatisfied, forever consuming itself. And now we come to the human story. According to Boehme, the first human, Adam, was not originally the dense, physical creature we are now. Adam was a spiritual being, containing both masculine and feminine principles in unity, possessing what Boehme calls magical power, the ability to create through intention, to manifest through imagination. But Adam, like Lucifer before him, made a choice. He turned his attention away from the divine light and toward the material realm. He began to imagine into the earth rather than into God. This is the fall, not eating a piece of fruit, not breaking an arbitrary rule. The fall was a shift in the direction of desire. It was the soul choosing to identify with the dense, the heavy, the separate, rather than with the luminous and the whole. And as Adam's imagination sank into matter, his being followed. He became heavy. He fell into a kind of sleep. The feminine principle separated from him, becoming Eve, and the original wholeness was lost. Human reproduction became animal-like. Human perception became limited to the physical senses. The magical power of direct creation faded into dim memory. This is our inheritance. This is the condition we were born into. But here is where the story takes a hopeful turn. The physical world we inhabit, this realm of birth and death, pleasure and pain, growth and decay. Boehme calls this the third principle. It is neither pure heaven nor pure hell. It is a mixture, a middle ground. And this middle ground exists, according to Boehme, precisely to offer us a chance. The physical world is a kind of school, a place where the soul can learn, can choose, can gradually turn from darkness toward light. If we had fallen directly into hell, pure fire without any light, there would be no escape. The darkness would be complete. But instead, we fell into this mixed realm, where both possibilities remain open, where every day, in 1,000 small ways, we can choose what direction our fire burns. This is why we are here. This is what human life is for. Part 4. The Great Work. So now we come to the practical question, and the question that matters more than all the cosmological detail. How do we find our way home? How does the soul, trapped in darkness and density, recover its original light? Boehme's answer is what he calls regeneration. And it is not what most of us have been taught to expect. Regeneration is not moral improvement. It is not becoming a nicer person, a better citizen, even a more upstanding member of society. These things may happen along the way, but they are not the point. Regeneration is not a reward for good behavior. God does not hand out prizes to those who follow the rules. The universe does not work that way. Regeneration is a metaphysical transformation. It is the soul being remade from the inside out. It is the fire learning to serve the light. It is the birth of something new in the center of your being. Boehme calls this the birth of Christ within. Now, let me be careful here. When Boehme speaks of Christ, he is not speaking primarily of a historical figure who lived in Palestine 2,000 years ago. He is speaking of a cosmic principle, the principle of light, of logos, of divine wisdom entering into the darkness of nature and redeeming it from within. The historical Jesus, in this understanding, is the supreme example of this principle. He is the pattern, the demonstration, the proof that it can be done. But the point is not to worship that example from afar. The point is to allow the same process to unfold in you. This is what Boehme means when he says that believing in a historical Christ does not save. What saves is allowing the Christ, the light, to be born in the stable of your own animal soul. Think about the Christmas story in this light. Where was Christ born? Not in a palace, not in a temple, in a stable, among animals, in the humblest, most earthy circumstances imaginable. This is not just poetry, this is instruction. The light is not born in the refined parts of us, in our spiritual pretensions, our high-minded ideals, our polished self-image. The light is born in our animal nature, in our instincts and hungers, in the very fire that we might have thought was the problem. But this birth does not happen automatically. It requires something of us. Boehme speaks of the Virgin Sophia, divine wisdom, who must re-enter the soul for the transformation to occur. Sophia is the feminine principle of receptivity, of openness, of pure spiritual perception. She was lost when Adam fell into material heaviness, and she must be recovered. What does this mean practically? It means learning to be receptive. It means creating space within yourself, quieting the endless noise of the ego, the constant chatter of want and fear, so that something deeper can be heard. It means what the contemplative traditions call prayer, or meditation, or simply presence. Not asking God for things, not reciting words, but opening, listening, turning the attention of the heart toward its source. When Sophia enters the soul, she brings with her a kind of spiritual substance, what Boehme calls a new body. The soul begins to be clothed in light. The fire, instead of consuming, begins to radiate. But there is a cost. The old self, what Boehme calls the old Adam, does not give up easily. The patterns of self-will, the habits of grasping, the deeply ingrained tendency to imagine into the earth rather than into God, all of this must die, and it doesn't die quietly. This is why Boehme speaks so often of suffering, of the cross, of the necessity of friction. The light is born through fire. There is no other way. Think about it. What actually changes you? Is it comfort? Is it ease? Or is it difficulty? The illness that strips away everything false, the loss that breaks open your heart, the failure that finally humbles your pride. Boehme understood that spiritual transformation is not a pleasant addition to an already comfortable life. It is a death, the death of everything we thought we were, so that something new can be born. This doesn't mean we should seek suffering for its own sake. It doesn't mean we should interpret every misfortune as a divine lesson. But it means that when suffering comes, and it will come, we can receive it differently. We can offer it as fuel to the fire. We can let it burn away what needs to burn, and so that the light can emerge. Part 5. Heaven and Hell. Now we must speak of what happens when this physical life ends. Boehme's teaching here is both stark and liberating. Death, he says, is simply the shedding of the physical body, the third principle, falling away. What remains is the soul in whatever state it has cultivated during its time on earth. This is the crucial point. Heaven and hell are not places you go to after you die. They are states of being that you are already creating now. If your will has been turned toward the light, if the fire in you has learned to serve rather than consume, then when the physical body falls away, you simply remain in that state. You continue in love, in peace, in unity with the divine. This is heaven. If your will has been turned inward, locked in self-centered craving, if the fire burns dark, feeding only on itself, then when the physical body falls away, you remain in that state too. You continue in anguish, in hunger, in isolation. This is hell. The physical world, in this sense, is a kind of buffer. It dilutes the intensity of our inner state. We can be in hell inwardly while still enjoying a sunny day outwardly. We can be spiritually dark while still being distracted by pleasure and activity. But death removes the buffer. Death leaves us fully immersed in whatever we have become. This is not punishment. This is simply honesty. God does not send anyone to hell. The soul judges itself, or rather, the soul reveals itself. It becomes fully what it has chosen to be. And here is the mercy in Boehme's teaching, man. The choice is still being made, right now, in this moment. Every moment that you turn your attention toward love rather than fear, you are building heaven. Every moment that you offer your suffering as fuel for transformation rather than complaint, you are building heaven. Every moment that you quiet the endless grasping of the ego and open to something greater, you are building heaven. It is not about earning salvation. It is not about being good enough. It is about direction. It is about which way your fire burns. And the direction can always be changed until the very last breath. The direction can always be changed. Part 6. Practical Wisdom for Modern Seekers. Let me now gather some practical threads from everything we have explored. First, stop waiting for salvation from outside. No teacher, no technique, no doctrine can do this work for you. They can point the way, they can offer guidance and encouragement. But the actual transformation happens within. You are the laboratory. You are the alchemist. You are both the lead that must be transformed and the gold that is waiting to emerge. This is what Boehme means when he says that the entire history of the universe is written in you. You do not need to read more books. You do not need to find the right tradition or the right teacher. Everything you need is already present, waiting to be awakened. Second, understand faith differently. Faith is not believing something you cannot prove. Faith is not accepting propositions about the past. Faith is the soul's hunger reaching toward what it most deeply needs. Think of a newborn baby reaching for its mother's breast. That is faith, not an opinion, not a doctrinal position, a living movement of need and trust. Your soul has this same kind of hunger, a hunger for the divine, for wholeness, for home. That hunger is not a problem to be solved. It is the very engine of your transformation. Feed it. Follow it. Let it draw you toward the light. Third, do not try to extinguish your fire. So many spiritual teachings seem to suggest that peace means the absence of intensity, that enlightenment means no longer wanting anything, that the goal is a kind of blank, desireless calm. Boehme says no. Your intensity is sacred. Your desire is the raw material of transformation. Without fire, there is no light. The problem is not that you burn. The problem is what you burn for. The problem is fire separated from light, desire that serves only itself. So do not try to become passionless. Instead, let your passion be transformed. Let your intensity serve something greater than your small self. Let your fire become light. Fourth, embrace the necessity of friction. When things are difficult, when you are frustrated, heartbroken, confused, afraid, you are in the fire. This is not a mistake. This is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. This is the raw material of your transformation. The question is not whether you will suffer. The question is whether your suffering will be fuel for light or fuel for more darkness. Offer it up. This is the oldest spiritual advice and still the most practical. When the fire rises in you, when you feel the burn of anxiety, anger, or grief, do not suppress it. Do not merely express it. Offer it. Let it become the fuel for something luminous. Fifth, understand that you are choosing heaven or hell right now, not later, not after death. Now. In this moment, as you listen to these words, you're either turning toward light or away from it. You're either softening the shell of your self-will or hardening it. You're either making room for Sophia or closing the door. This is not said to frighten you, it is said to empower you. Because if heaven and hell are states you create, then you are not helpless. You are not waiting for a verdict from some distant judge. You are the author of your own spiritual destiny, and the authorship continues until the very last breath. The story can change. Conclusion. An invitation. What Boehme offers is not a doctrine to believe, but a path to walk. Not information about spiritual realities, but instruction for spiritual transformation. And the essence of that instruction can be stated very simply: turn the fire toward the light. Every tradition, every technique, every genuine spiritual teaching is ultimately about this. It is about taking the raw intensity of your human life, your hunger, your passion, your suffering, and offering it as fuel for something higher. This is the alchemy. This is the great work. This is what it means to be born again, not as a member of some religious club, but as a transformed being, a soul in whom the dark fire has become radiant light. Boehme knew that words could only point. The real teaching happens in silence, in the secret places of the heart, in moments that cannot be described. And so I will end not with more explanation, but with an invitation. There is a place in you that already knows what I'm speaking of, a place that has always known. It has been waiting, patiently, quietly, for you to remember. It does not ask for perfect belief. It does not require theological sophistication. It only asks for your attention, your willingness, your hunger. The Virgin Sophia is waiting. The light is waiting. The eternal birth that Boehme spent his life describing is not an event in the past or the future. It is a possibility in this very moment. Turn toward it, open to it, offer your fire, and see what light comes. This teaching is offered in the spirit of Jacob Boehme, not as final truth, but as a lamp for the path. May it illuminate what needs to be seen, may it warm what needs to be warmed, and may it point, always, beyond itself, to the living reality that no words can contain.